Welcome back to our FireStop Solutions Codes and Compliances. We will be continuing on our third and fourth segment along with me, again, Mr. Said Muzaffar, working with us with Fisher, and Mr. Abhishek from Thomas Bellwright. So now we are going to present our third segment. Our third segment is for the applications and field issues. So these applications-based section, let's start with Mr. Muzaffar.
Yeah, okay. I've spoken enough.
So, what do we need to do, Muzaffar, if we need T rating in HVAC?
Oh.
Insulated duct penetrations. Is there any UL FireStop system available for this?
Wow. So I think this is now coming close to the heart of applications, or the majority of our viewers will be interested in this segment a lot more.
Yes, close to the contractors.
Close to the contractors, yeah. And close to us also.
Yes.
We are also going to be talking about applications, right? So this is very exciting. Now, the question is a very, very fundamental question about the T rating. Now, the T rating, as we discussed previously also, the T rating is required if the code requires that at that particular location. So, on the top of my mind, I can think of a hospital lobby where people are going to escape, and these hospital lobbies are lined with fire-rated wall. And if there is a fire in one particular compartmentation, this heat should not block out the exit, right? So people are escaping. So that is where you need the T rating. Yeah. That being said, insulated ducts are very easy to get a T rating because they have the insulation on them. Metallic penetrations will be very difficult to get a T rating. So if for insulated duct, just to answer it very simply, we have a system called CAJ 7119, which has a T rating into the system itself. So definitely it's possible to give a T rating for an insulated duct, yes.
All right, great. Then what toxic fumes will come off your FireStop?
Okay, so this is also again a product related question. So if I understood right, basically there are two stages where people generally ask this. One is during the curing of the product itself, the sealant itself, when it cures, it has to be green building compliant.
Yeah.
So where the product should not emit, it should not emit any harmful organic compounds, VOC they call it, volatile organic compounds. So it should not emit that. So on behalf of Fischer, we can say very clearly that most of our sealants, or all of our sealants, are very low VOC sealants, right? And then the second part is when toxic fumes people think of is when it is burning.
Yeah.
So to be very practical, if it is burning, you shouldn't be there. You be looking at the toxic fume. You shouldn't be there.
Run away
you
immediately.
Should be out already. Yeah. So just to answer the question, some of our material are designed as intumescent material. So intumescent material, the ability of expanding when exposed to heat only activates when it starts burning.
Okay.
Right.
That is interesting, yeah.
Yes. So most of the products would have something called as a reaction to fire. Right. So reaction to fire is generally tested to ASTM E84 or some other test standards, and it gives you an idea what kind of byproducts are there when they burn. So most of our products, when they burn, you're not supposed to be there, number one. Number two, they should burn to provide that required resistance.
Okay.
That is what it is, but during the installation stage, you should not worry about anything. It's basically compliant to green buildings here. Yes.
That's great. Mr. Abhishek?
Yeah, well, I mean, as a lab, I know that toxicity and toxic gases is a subject which is, from a lab point of view, is a bit complicated because the standards are very limited when you want to say, well, which all toxic gases came out and how much do they came out. The ASTM E84 is a good test which does not talk about toxicity or so. It just rates how much smoke was produced. And this is very different from trying to say how much and which all toxic gases came out. But like you rightly said, if there is a fire, please don't be there, just evacuate or go away. Because as more and more advancement of materials happen, there is possibility of much higher toxic or content to get created.
Okay, there is also one question, and I'm also myself is curious to know, what if the FireStop gets wet? Is it gonna work? Or?
Yes, so as we said that there is some systems which have W rating, so that means it is tested for wetness, yeah. But now in sealant again, before curing and after curing. So a sealant before curing should not get wet, definitely. Only the little bit wetness that you use for finishing of the job, but it should not get wet before curing. But once cured, all of our FireStop sealants are something called as water resistant, not waterproof. There's a difference between waterproofing and water resistance. So our sealants will not re-emulsify. What they say is they will not become a paste again when exposed to water once they are cured. So it's fine if it is becomes wet after curing. It's fine. Before curing, it's not fine. It's not fine
Okay.
at all.
I don't have anything to add. This is a manufacturer.
Yes.
Everybody has their own way of designing their products, sealants, materials.
Makes sense. So we have the following questions also, like based on the applications and drywall assemblies.
Okay.
So the first is, if there is no gap in between two penetrations passing through the fire-rated drywall. Second one is if the patch board is fixed around the penetration to close the opening. So
Patch board. I think.
Could you say that again?
yeah, we have the first question, if there is no gap in between two penetrations passing through the fire-rated drywall. So they're asked the questions based on the applications and drywall assemblies.
Well, I mean, as a lab and as a certification body, our answers are always very straightforward because we say, well, look, hunt for a listed system. If it's not listed on a given certification body's directory, there are other certification bodies who could have listed it. So, I mean, you could probably answer this separately, but for a contractor who's trying to figure out what to do, he has a certain scenario. Well, there are lots of certification directories where you could look up a system like that, and if not, you should get it tested and verified. In any practical scenario, first test a listed system. Second option, go test it or come over to my lab and test it. And third is what everybody's usually very, very careful about is engineering judgment, which is possible, which is doable. But in case you're writing an engineering judgment, whoever is writing should be very clear that if you are in a given jurisdiction, so for example, if you are in UAE, look at the chapter 18 of the Fire and Life Safety Code, which talks about roles and responsibilities equal to liabilities. Are you ready to take on the liability of writing or issuing an engineering judgment? If yes, good. And the same goes, different jurisdictions have got different liabilities. So that's my perspective. You could probably say more from a field point of view.
Yes, sure. So perfect. That's perfect. Actually, the thing is now the questioner is referring to the drywall assemblies.
Yes.
Yeah. So drywall assemblies basically are having several tested systems, right? But they are all tested to an assembly which is constructed and penetrated, right? Now the patching, what I understand by patching is somebody has come in, they have made a big opening, and then the contractor decided to patch it up with a overlapping drywall, as we can see in the image, right? So this patching work has to be confirmed by the assembly manufacturer, not by the FireStop, right? So if they confirm that their patching would give the same rating, then they come to the next stop, which is FireStopping. Now when we come to the FireStopping, and they say that we have multiple penetrations, right? Two pipes, 3 pipes, 4 pipes going together. We have a lot of tested evidence which gives solutions for multiple penetrations together. Sometimes in concrete walls, sometimes in dry walls, sometimes in several substrates, right? So based on that, first stop the patching. The assembly itself should be fire rated. Second stop, FireStop.
Okay.
If it is fine over there, second stop, we have listed system. You can definitely use the listed system.
Okay. That's great. Is there also any tested system for damper passing through head of wall joints? Mr. Abhishek?
I mean, I do not remember all the listed systems.
Yeah.
There is likelihood that there will be a listed system by some or the other manufacturer, but it is not something that I can straight away say from the top of my head. There are lots and lots of evidences that have gathered over the last 2-3 decades. Very, very big number of possibilities that happen. So probably you would know if Fischer has a listed system or your competitor has a listed system, which you will probably not say.
Yeah,
So Muzaffar?
Yes. So damper. A damper is itself a passive part of passive fire protection, right? And the way you install the damper is a very, very specific way, as given by the installer and as tested by the labs, right?
It has to
be-
activate.
yes, it has to activate.
Yes.
So generally, when you install a damper, there is always a small gap around the damper, and this gap is the gap which is basically shut when the damper activates. So it would be like, a kind of an irony that in a penetration we have a gap which we are supposed to actually close, but that is closed by the damper itself, not by a fire stopping thing. So that is the reason why generally a damper would not have a listed system with a fire stop system. It would be a separate system altogether. Now coming to the concept where you have a damper which is passing through the head of wall joint. Okay, this is a very, very incorrect way of installing penetrations through a head of wall joint. Basically, the requirement for joint testing and the joint performance is completely or majorly different from a penetration. Just for an example, that the joint always requires a movement. And imagine you restrict that movement with a MEP service, right? So you are basically impairing the function of the joint instead of adding any value.
Yes.
Right? So generally they have come up with this concept called no-fly zone. No-fly zone means that a zone under the joint in which there should be no penetrations. Generally about 150, 200 mm below the joint, depending on the tested system. Right? So damper, number one, will have to have a smoke seal from a fire stop manufacturer. Right? Secondly, penetrations should not be within the joint. There are certain tested systems with penetrations in the wall limited to only steel conduits, which are in size lesser than the joint size. So the impairment of movement does not happen. This is what is the whole crux of the matter. So penetrations and joints, separate it out. That is the best.
Okay.
Thanks. To continue with our questions, Muzaffar, like the previous one, fire alarm cables passing through the head of wall joints. Any tested system is there for the below side condition?
The side condition, yes, okay. This kind of a side condition, basically, you have a cable passing through. To be honest, I have not seen any tested system with cables in it. As I told you, it's only the conduits which is there. But this could be potentially solved. We have done some testing with Thomas Bell, right? Where we have penetrations passing through the head of wall joint as well. Just to make sure that it is rigorously tested. So we are testing it to the higher of the two requirements, the joint requirement and the MEP requirement. We test it to that, and then we are able to give a solution based on that. So let's say that we will be able to provide a solution, but there is no tested system, listed system.
Mr. Abhishek, civil defense will allow this condition?
Well, in the eyes of civil defense, they need the first option is to see a listed system. Okay, and there may be a listed system, there may not be a listed system for any such scenario. This is the first way. The second, as I always said, if you have a test evidence, that's great for civil defense to say yes, we have proof enough. And third, as I said, if there is someone who is taking on the responsibility and liability of writing an engineering judgment, civil defense will accept. Absolutely. But yes, as a lab, as I said, come test.
Come test, yes.
Sure.
You would like to add?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
So there's one interesting question.
Yeah.
On behalf of this person, I need products that will resist the growth of molds and fungi. Is Fischer FireStop able to do this? Do we have this, Muzaffar?
Yes, this is also one of the topics which we talk about when we talk about these fire stops being applied in shafts, in washrooms and all these areas. These areas basically, require, they will be damp, they will have mold growth and fungus growth. So all of our sealant are having within them capability of resisting mold and mildew, and they are some of our sealants also have fungicidal elements within them. So our products are designed in that fashion. Yes.
I think this is becoming more and more important nowadays. It has been very important, and I know this from a very different point of view, as we are heavily involved as a company in building envelopes and facades, and a lot of facade installation has got to do with assurance that there is no air leakage, there is no dampness leakage in the facade system, because once done or once improperly installed, there is no way to undo it. And indoor air quality as a construct has become very, very important now, specifically when all of humanity has faced and is still facing a big pandemic. People are realizing that health is very important, and in case you have a large building or an occupancy which can potentially create molds and fungus and all of this, it is not something that can be removed, and it is then considered as an unhealthy building, and there is no way back. So I think it's good you guys have products that help.
It's good that we do have a product for that. Okay, why do we need to use universal color with FIWs for pipe diameter 4-inch? And another question related also to FIWs is, can we use FIWs for large opening? If yes, what is the methodology in this case?
I have
So-
no idea.
so
I don't even know these names.
I am very, very happy that people are now sending
Somebody
it
recalls your product name.
with the product name itself.
Yes.
So it's very good. So FIWS, just for the general information, it is basically the wrap.
Okay.
The wrap which is used for combustible pipes. It's a wrap which will be expanding when there is a fire. So for 4-inch pipe, you necessarily not required the collar. The wrap can be installed inside. Now the wrap, the way it works is when there is a fire, it expands.
Yeah.
But the wrap doesn't know where to expand, and it will always expand in the the path of least resistance. Now imagine that you don't have an annular gap, right? And you want to install the wrap, but you're not able to install it. So you'll have to install the wrap outside. But when you install the wrap outside, and when there's a fire, it starts expanding, and it expands into the air.
Yeah.
It does not crush the pipe. It does not perform its required duty. So what do? We have something called as a retaining collar. The retaining collar is made of steel. It gives it a shape. It directs the wrap to expand inward, thereby closing that opening rather than being wasted. So that is how the retaining collar is required if there is no annular gap for 4-inch.
Yeah.
And for above floors, for above sizes, as per the tested system, from above 4-inch, you definitely need a retaining angle, and the requirement is slightly different. Why it is there, why it has been designed like that, is because the amount of intumescent within the wall will be so high that we assume the worst, that the wall might not be able to retain that pressure.
Yeah.
So you need something outside. That is number one. Number two is this wrap, it has an activation temperature.
Yeah.
And being a big opening, we want that activation temperature to be reached very fast.
Yes.
So the retaining collar, if you put the wrap inside the wall, it is insulated because of the wall itself. So you bring the wrap outside, expose it to the heat, and the retaining collar acts as a heat sink, kind of a heat sink, The metal part takes the heat, transfers it to the wrap, and it activates it. So that is also the reason why you need to have a collar outside. But again, we have tested systems for both scenarios.
Okay.
Within the wall, outside the wall. So within the wall, generally called as a tuck-in type of system. Outside the wall, it's called as a retained application. So in either cases, this is what the solution would be with a FIWS wrap strip. And for the second part of the question, he was asking about the bigger openings. Definitely the wrap would be required in the bigger opening, but in the bigger opening, because there is a limitation of maximum annular gap, if the annular gap is much, much bigger, you will need to use an additional product like a mortar or a board system to close that opening, bring it into the annular gap required, and then use a wrap.
Great. Also, this question goes to Mr. Muzaffar. Why
Field
do we need
questions
to
to him.
use steel angles around HVAC ducts in WJ7120 and WJ7121? What is the reason?
Very, very interesting question, very, very repeated question. Many a times people ask us that, why do you want to specify a retaining angle around the duct? So, as you see in the screen, we have done a testing on a duct. before and after. Before without retaining angle, after it has burned without the retaining angle. This duct didn't survive much. What is the main reason that it didn't survive much? You can see that the duct is a thin element. Okay, I'm just talking about the concept now, not the technical requirement. This is concept. So this is a very thin element, and when it is exposed to heat, it expands.
Yeah.
And when it expands, it deforms. And when it deforms, it creates a bigger annular gap than was initially intended. And then, of course, if there is a big annular gap, the product doesn't perform and the fire passes through. So the retaining angle is responsible to hold the duct in shape and prevent that deformation. And now coming to the part where it's related to the codes. If you go to SMACNA, which is the standard which all the metal duct manufacturers follow, they have a requirement where the retaining angle should be there when the duct is passing through a fire rated assembly. That is the reason why the duct requires a retaining angle.
Okay, that's really great from you, Muzaffar. Now, moving forward, Mr. Abhishek.
Finally, some questions
Yeah,
for me.
there is also a question for you. When fastening FireStop materials to a substrate, is there a specific fastening configuration and fastener type required? Why is this also important?
I think, and if I understand what Muzaffar was also trying to say, kind of building on from him, that it has got to do with the intumescent property of fire stopping as a material, and for fire stopping material to activate, it needs to expand, and if the fastener is not correctly installed or correctly tightened, this expansion could create a situation where the end goal is not achieved.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Basically, the fastener plays also a very important role as a system again. So the fastener needs to stay in place till the expansion happens. And if while expanding, the collar comes loose, the whole system falls off.
Yeah.
And again, there is a big opening.
Yes.
So that is basically the requirement of the fastener to be there in place. Yes.
Also, Mr. Abhishek, can you use a 4-hour fire sealant in a 3-hour rated wall?
This is a trick question, and I don't know whoever sent this question. It's a question probably trying to test my knowledge. And as far as I know, there is no 4-hour fire sealant. So, and why would you over-engineer and over-design something? If there's 3 hours, use 3 hours. It's like people who test fire doors with us. They come to us and they say that I have a fire door which is a 90-minute fire door. Can you give me a certification for this to be a 60-minute or a 30-minute fire door as well? And of course it is. But why do you want to waste it? Someone who has designed just a 30-minute fire door will of course be cheaper than something which is a 90-minute fire door. And I think the same thing goes for this. But as far as I know, whoever is trying to test me, I hope I pass it. I don't think there is a 4-hour sealant.
Yes. Just to add on, actually, this is also a misconception, which again I think that somebody is trying to just send us a question to derail. Basically, the sealant itself does not have a rating, as we discussed. The sealant or the product FireStop does not have a rating. It's always the system which will have the rating. The sealant will only have a reaction test, right? How the sealant will perform in the particular system will be totally different. For example,
it depends on how it is installed.
How is it installed? Yes, and how much thickness and all that. For example, if you see any FireStop foam, be it from Fischer, be it from anybody, on that FireStop foam it will be written up to 4 hours.
Yeah.
In bold, it will mention like that. This is a very, very, very dangerous thing because people do not understand what is the meaning of that up to 4 hours. So, if for example you have a 10 mm joint, right, and you fill only 10 mm of FireStop foam, it will reach up to maybe 4 hours or more. The moment the joint increases to 50 mm and you fill the whole gap with FireStop foam, you will get only 11-12 minutes. The foam, So this is a misconception which we also try to communicate to our contractors that when you talk about fire stopping, you talk about, as he said, optimized solutions, right? So if somebody says, sir, my product is having 5 hours fire rating, and the contractor says, oh wow, awesome, let me ask Fisher if they can give me a 5-hour fire rating. So I generally turn around and ask, what is the fire rating of your walls? 30-40 minutes. Then why do you need a 5-hour fire rated sealant? And sealant does not have a fire rating anyhow. Yes. So that's a simple answer there. Sealant does not have a fire rating. It's always the system.
Well, that was really a long segment for our third segment. We will be moving forward for our fourth segment, and we've learned a lot in these applications and field issues in FireStop. Now, for our fourth segment, we have the responsibilities and liabilities in field inspections.
Oh, something Mr. Abhishek loves.
Yeah, Mr. Abhishek loves to give his insight and knowledge.
And,
My favorite chapter is chapter 18
yes.
of the UAE Fire Life Safety.
So we will take a few questions pertaining for this topic. And for my first questions, of course, to Mr. Abhishek. Mr. Abhishek, can third-party inspection be done by the FireStop contractor?
Well, absolutely not, in my opinion. And I think I was trying to go in this direction earlier as well, that as human beings we will always err, and it is impossible for a contractor, any contractor, to do their job just about right all the time. It is impossible, and you need an independent third party, someone who does not have any commercial link with the contract, and this is the key. In fact, there are some occasions where we've got a question from someone saying, where I don't want to have your services as an independent third party inspection agency. I know another FireStop contractor who has got a DRI, or a designated responsible individual, as per a conformity program, and can I just hire him? And then this is very, very tricky, because if you've got two contractors and they would of course want to derail the other one. I mean, they cannot be such good friends that they will let anybody else do it. So the question has two separate things. One, there is a need for an independent third party body, and when I say independent, the independence has to be technical, the independence has to be commercial, because until or unless there is a commercial delinkage, then the inspection work cannot be independent.
So just to build on further, this comes to the topic of the third principle of DIIM, that is the inspection, right? So the key Abhishek was talking about was the term that is used generally is conflict of interest.
Exactly.
So when we were talking about fire life safety, it is paramount important that we avoid the conflict of interest to the maximum extent, especially when we talk about commercial interest.
Yeah, in fact, there are contracts and jurisdictions who will mandate that the third party inspector cannot be hired by the contractor as well. Whereas here, often the third party inspection agency is also hired by the contractor to oversee the subcontractor's work. But conflict of interest is something which is paramount. It is in the interest of the main contractor to finish the whole job completely and quickly. So if the third party inspector comes in and says, well, this whole floor needs a rework, it means you're backed by so much time and so much money, etc., and the stage linked payments will not come in. So there are contracts and certain jurisdictions who will say the third party inspector has either to report to the AHJ, or the authority having jurisdiction like the civil defense, or in some cases also to the owner. So creating this independence is paramount.
Yes. So what I was saying was, even for the owner's perspective, if you talk about the building owner perspective, it is very important for him to have a building which is insured properly, right? So you can imagine that the contractor who has hired the third party, for example, there is a chance of arm twisting, right? So we want to avoid that. And if we go to the codes, go to IBC or any of these codes always try to remove the conflict of interest part. So the inspection, we have come across many places where the contractor says, you, manufacturer, should do the inspection. We as manufacturer are not allowed to do the inspection. Why? Because we are supplying the material. That is our interest, right? And we are supposed to get payments. That is also our interest. So the contractor can hold the payment and say, approve this, right? That is very dangerous for the owner.
Very, very dangerous.
So we should not. So it is very clear. So there is inspection guidelines from ASTM, BE 2393, where they have very specifically mentioned the manufacturer is not supposed to do inspection. Only thing that the manufacturer can do is can add on, right? Can add on and say, okay, this inspection looks right, this inspection does not look right, let us do this opening, but not a liability, not a complete conformance. This goes always to the third party, like a Thomas Bellwright consultant, or we have so many
third party
fire consultants. We call them in UAE as house of expertise. They are responsible to ensure that the installation matches with the design, right? And the contractor has done the right job, not just because of the pressure of time they have just and went away. So that is very important.
The manufacturer can only or should take care of the fact that if I sell a given material and it comes with an application guideline, the manufacturer can, of course, take ownership that the way I told you to install it, it is being installed that way. Of course, because it is in their interest as well. Otherwise, the manufacturer said, use it in this way, and it's used in that way. And then someone else will come up and say, hey, Fischer product did not activate or did not function. Well, it was not installed correctly. So it is in the interest of the manufacturer as a brand image that wherever the product goes, it kind of gets installed correctly. But that is not the inspection to say the installation is correct independently. So these two things should not be mixed up.
Just to say that, as Avijay was saying, manufacturer installation instructions, we do as Fischer also provide hands-on training to our applicators, and our contractors, whoever is applying around the world. We go ahead, we do the training, we do the mock-ups, and then they have to follow that. But to ensure that they follow, cannot be by manufacturer. That is what the point is. It's a liability point of
view. I mean, it's like, you buy a phone, you buy a charger, you buy a television, you buy a refrigerator, and I don't know if you've seen, it says guarantee voids if installed here or there or whatever. So it is the reputation of the brand, of the company, of the manufacturer, which is very much at stake. But if the user is not using the product correctly,
yes,
that's true. So now, Mr. Abhishek, what if there is no government policy or regulation? Someone also wanted to
okay, you go
test you.
Probably work in Timbuktu or something.
Yes.
Well, I think there will always be a government policy which holds in essence that we do not want unsafe work to be delivered. It's just like kind of a thumb rule. But I think it is very important for whoever is creating any infrastructure, there has to be a developer or someone whose money is on the table, or someone who is an insurer who's insuring it against a fire, would always point towards best practices, towards certain building codes which exist. And I think it boils down to what do you really want to do? I mean, it's almost like asking in a different way that as a subcontractor, do you want to kill people? I mean, nobody will really ask that, and nobody really wants to do that. But if you are aware that your inaction or your wrong actions can put a threat to life or property, you would not do it. So it's a strange question, what the jurisdiction or not. Maybe the jurisdiction is not yet evolved in terms of having hundreds of thousands of fires in its history or in its analysis to come up with a decree or a law or a technical regulation. But if you are a supplier, if you are a manufacturer, if you are a subcontractor in that business, then you should be kind of careful.
So just to add on, let us look at it in a perspective of let's say manufacturer, perspective of the owner, perspective of the consultant, perspective of the contractor. What is in it for them?
Yeah.
You know, so manufacturer, when we are developing these solutions, we go aggressively educating people why they need it. You know, so we educate the contractors, we educate the developers or owners, we educate the consultants. So now that part is in the interest of the manufacturer. Now when we go to the owner, now owner is spending millions and millions of money on developing. So we're not talking about small buildings, we're talking about big developments, right? So there will be large infrastructures, and if there is a fire, there will be a huge liability. First of all, he will lose the property 100%, right? But then the families will be suing them, right? So whom will they sue? They will not sue the contractor, they will not sue the manufacturer, they will sue the owner. So the owner should understand his liability, what he's carrying, you know, is immense.
Yes.
Then you come to the contractor's perspective. Contractor is responsible, for example, in some countries, up to 10 years of guarantee.
Performance guarantee, yes.
Performance, right? So imagine that the contractor has cut corners, for example. I don't say that anybody does that. We have very good contractors who are working to the book, trying their level best to the book. But if somebody does cut the corner, and say within 1 year, there is a fire, and the property is damaged, who is responsible? Contractor. Again, he comes in the picture. And finally, the consultant. What kind of level of service and expertise the consultant brings to the table? So, if they don't talk about fire safety, so they talk about structural safety, architectural. Obviously, fire is one of the main principle in a building construction, in a built environment.
Yeah.
So, when we talk about these liabilities with people, then the government regulation becomes the last step. You know, people do it proactively.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So, but in some cases, of course, you know, we all are humans. We need the stick. Sometimes we do need it. So in that cases, definitely the government plays an important role. But if you are building something big, you better be sure that your liability is limited. And even if you go for insurance, right? So agencies like FM Global, they will not insure, or they will insure with a very high premium for buildings or built environment which is not matching with the check boxes: structural stability, architectural stability, fire safety, all of this.
Long list.
Yeah, it's a long list of check boxes. So if any, and fire plays a major part. So if it is not there, your premium goes very high, and if something happens, the claim becomes a mess. And at the end, we always talk about life.
Yes.
You know, we lose life. It's very difficult. One thing gone. Yes.
That was really informative information from both of our experts. And also, there is another question: when there is no specification from the consultant. Mr. Abhishek.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to kind of what we have just now addressed, that who is liable. And it's just one step below from when you said, what if the government has not set up anything? Well, the government may have set up something in place saying, well, he's liable, she's liable in case this goes wrong. So if she's liable, then she will ensure that specifications are in place. I'm just using random words, but just if there are no specifications in place, then as a supplier who is supposed to do fire stopping, so if you're a contractor and you are doing fire stopping, then the fire stopping has to function. You're getting paid for it. So there is a contract. It may not have been explicitly defined how it should be done, but if it doesn't work, then you have not done your job. But yeah, it's not explicit, it's implicit, but it's sad. And if there is a contract which does not have specifications, I hope the stakeholder is listening to this conversation and please add.
Yes. Yes. Very. Means we have come across very few consultants but no, I don't think so. Even one where the specification doesn't call for fire safety in general. You know, so we have these councils, IFC and all these. They have ready-made specifications. We Fischer also provide this service where we give you the specifications of what a FireStop system should be in general, not as part of only Fischer material. In general, what a FireStop system. You know, we always like to educate people. Yeah. So we always call ourselves innovative company and engineering company. So we always support the consultants providing the specifications and all that. So if there is something like that, they can get in touch with us.
Of
We'll
Yes.
definitely give you.
Please get in touch with
Yes.
us.
We'll definitely be able to help you out. Yes.
Also, I am curious to know, same as the person who's actually asked this, maintaining records and FireStop stickers. What do we mean by that?
This is very important. Maintenance, I think you were talking about DIM.
Yes.
M comes in maintenance,
M,
but
yes.
even if you don't go DIM, and if you are an individual who does not know DIM as a concept, I would like to share a perspective from the cladding background. You know, the cladding fire safety has been a massive issue around the world and in this part of the world as well. And I would like to share that I get a call almost once a quarter or sometimes once in 2 months from either a building owner or a related FM company who would say, well, I have such and such cladding, I have no documentation whatsoever, and I am debating and discussing with my insurer who is here to increase my premium. And can you give me some evidence? And this is where documentation is the key. And from my understanding, fire stopping, almost a good considerable of fire stopping gets hidden after the building gets complete. You know, wherever you are sitting, in your office, in your homes, do you see fire stopping anywhere? Very unlikely. It gets hidden. So if proper documentation does not exist for fire stopping, then we are in a mess. Not just from the likes of insurers, but in a very, very big way from all the FM and maintenance and rework, because any property that has been built, any occupancy that has been constructed, it will never remain in that form all its life, right? There has to be rework, there has to be stuff that is to be done again. So if there is no record of what was done earlier, if fire stopping was done, where is what, then we are in a mess. And I think as humanity as well as professionals, we have all evolved a lot. We talk of BIM and we talk of digitization to such a high degree that basic concepts related to documentation are a bare minimum, are a key in my opinion.
Yes, that's true. Yes, that's actually very true. Once you complete the work, the project has been executed, the owner is going to be responsible to take care of that particular building, right? So and after some time, you will have a requirement for replacing a pipe, replacing a duct, changing the occupancy of the building. Sometimes there is an office that needs to be changed to an accommodation. So there will be different set of services that would be required. So basically, it is about the fire barrier maintenance. What comes into fire barrier maintenance? The barrier itself and the fire stop. These are the two topics. Before you go to handover itself, when you go for inspection, there should be a record, a log, which states what has been applied. So the consultant checks whether that is correct. And there should be a reference to a system or an EJ or whatever it is. And then the consultant is supposed to be able to open it. So we, as Fischer, also are providing a training as of now, but pretty soon we also have a kind of a support, a tool that we would be sharing with our customers where they can record, log, and we can give them an easy access to the building for X number of years, and whenever they need, they can just access that particular location. They can open it and they can see it. Now, coming to the point of the stickers play also a very, very important role, because the sticker is giving you the reference of who has installed it, what time it was installed, and yes, the word that he used rightly is the traceability.
Yes.
So the traceability is provided by the sticker, and if somebody has removed the pipe, what they need to do when they reinstall the pipe, they will see the system and they have to buy the same things, install it in the same way. So this becomes a very, very important part of maintenance, because if, for example, the barrier is not maintained, then the passive fire protection concept is already out. So we come back to the same one leg safety,
That's great to know. And actually, like what you have said, it's important that documentation, the organizing of how to do the documentation is really
very
executed.
Important. Very, very important.
And also, Mr. Abhishek, there is one question regarding to documentation of fire stopping. It's not maintained. as per the person who asked this question, what are the repercussions for improper documentation and records?
Well, one of the primary repercussion is this, that I just talked about insurance as something that comes up very, very often. But the repercussion is all related to liability and who is the building owner. And in case there is a failure, there is a massive repercussion to all the stakeholders, the building owner, the occupant, the FM company, and so on and so forth. So there are massive repercussions, but repercussions again are very much linked with the type of occupancy, which is the building and which is the jurisdiction.
Well,
yes, that's what he has summed up very simply, and
Doesn't let him speak.
Yes, nothing much more to speak. So if I just summarize it, loss of life, loss of property, loss of finance, loss of operations. You just look at all of these different losses, and you decide whether the documentation is important or what is it that you risk.
Exactly.
So we have to take care of this documentation very, very specifically. And if, for example, in this instance, I would also like to highlight this. The applicators who are trained to do fire stopping, rather than the general contractors. So if a general contractor does, he will not understand these requirements of fire stop logging and fire stop tracking. The applicators, they have a well-developed system. Without that system, they will not get their conformity certificate, right? So they have a system of logging everything, and when they hand over all of that together to the owner. So it is always very important that, for specific kind of jobs, we have specialists in the field. We depend on them.
I answered one of the earlier questions. I don't know which section it was, that what should be asked contractually. And these are the key things that should be part of the contract and have a commercial link with it, saying, well, you'll not get the money if this is not there. And that's, as you said, stick. That's probably the only way to get something which is very, very critical. So there should be, if anybody's listening and is a contract writer, you must make sure that you add a line saying, well, so much money will not come in if the documentation is not complete.
There is a retention, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, actually, we have learned a lot also in this segment about responsibilities and liabilities in field inspection. And we are actually wrapping up because the webinar has come to an end already, and you guys also have a lot of questions that we wanted to address. As mentioned earlier, there's also a question bar where you can raise your question where we have to address later, and we are very glad to have our two experts with us today to answer all your questions. And it was really a lovely and informative and session that we have today. So guys, we thank you all for participating with us. We hope in the future we could also do this in actual session.
Maisa, so apart from that, just to wrap up the session, this was a very, very interesting session. We thank all the people who have joined us today and have actively sent us many questions. We tried to cover up as much of questions as possible.
Yes.
However, if you have any further questions, you can visit the questions tab. We'll take a short time for the feedback. This is very important that we want you to go to the feedback tab, give us your feedbacks, and based on that we can have a next session or whatever it is. And just to wrap up, fire safety is a very, very important topic. I personally thank Mr. Abhishek for accepting our invitation to be part of this. He's from a certification body, we are from manufacturers. It's a very rare combination where we come together, and you could have seen that we have a lot of things that are matching. We, in the interest of fire life safety, we all work together. That is the point. And last closing words from Mr.
Abhishek.
Well, absolutely. I mean, like you rightly said, it was quite a question, and we would never really align with a given manufacturer, because I'll be very open. You have competitors, and we don't want other guys to come in and say, hey Abhishek, why did you sit with him? Why you not sit with us? and I think I am, it's got all to do with intent, and I have spent a lot of my energy since the last 1.5 years running monthly webinars, increasing awareness
Yes.
about fire and life safety. And I'll share something which is which is true. I come from India, north of India. We had a massive second wave in India, and we've lost a lot of people who are very close to us. And it's not just me. I think hundreds of thousands of people around the world have lost loved ones, and it is very, very painful. And I think many of us have very closely witnessed now what it is to lose someone. And fire risk and fire safety is something which is very closely with just that pain. And a lot of us are lucky to not experience that pain. But if you speak to people who have lost their loved ones to a fire, to an accident that happened not because of their fault, but because of someone else's fault. Someone who wanted to save a little bit money here, a little bit there, someone who wanted to save time a little bit here and a little bit there, and said, okay, contract over, khalas, I'm going, But someone lost their life. And I think that is something that pinched me a lot as a person. And it created this kind of drive that I really need to get the word out. I really need to get the word out. And I have aligned and joined hands with anybody who has had such an intent. And many people, and when you guys reached out to me, and I said, yeah, of course, I'll take out time, because I'm not promoting Fischer. And all I'm saying is these are the right things to do, and they should be done. So that's my perspective. Good luck to all the listeners, and I hope all of you not only got their questions answered, but are carrying away some learnings back, and that will drive some interesting change in the way you do work in the future.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.